What's going on? It's SnowDrift here, and today I wanted to show you guys how to change the oil in your motorcycle. This process may be a little bit different depending on what kind of bike you have. If you have a Honda, or probably even like a Suzuki or a Yamaha or a Kawasaki of, you know, let's say between 2000 and maybe 2012-ish, this process is going to be pretty much the same no matter what bike that you have, unless you have, say, maybe a dry clutch bike. But even if you have a different kind of bike, this process is going to be the same for sport bikes pretty much no matter what your model you have. But like sport touring bikes or adventure bikes or cruisers, Harleys, things like that, this process is pretty much going to be the same kind of straightforward deal. So I'm going to show you step by step exactly what you need to do. I'm going to show you what you need and what tools you're going to need. So for an 06 CBR1000RR, and I'm pretty sure for any kind of, you know, few years up and few years down from that, any kind of Honda sport bike that you're going to have, you're going to need a number 5 Allen head for the fairing bolts, because we are going to have to remove some fairings for this process. Now, I use a T-handle because I reckon it's, you know, quick, easy, does the job really, really well, and you know, it's just, it gives you more leverage than what you really need. But honestly, it's better than using an Allen wrench, just a regular one, in my opinion. So you're going to need a number 5 Allen wrench. You can use a regular Allen wrench, or you can get something fancy like this. I got this from O'Reilly's, I think, and it wasn't that expensive, maybe 10, 11, 12 bucks maybe. Could be more expensive, could be less, I'm not sure. But anywho, they're not that expensive, period, and they're a pretty good tool to have around. I mean, it's not necessary, but it's a cool tool. So the Allen wrench was for the fairings. You're gonna need a 12mm wrench or ratchet to get the drain plug off the oil pan. That's probably gonna be a little bit different depending on what bike you have. But if you, like I said, a sports bike, especially if it's a Honda, it's probably going to be a 12, whether it's a 600 or a 1000 or maybe even like a 500 or 300 or 250, they're probably going to be 12 mil. You may get like a 10 mil on like a 250 or something, but for most bikes you're going to be using a 12mm, and that could probably go for Suzuki, Kawasaki, Yamaha, and Honda. If it's the same threads, the head bolt can really pretty much be any size that they want it to be. You're not going to stray too far between a 10 and maybe a 14. They're going to be somewhere in there, I would assume. Now, for Harleys, I don't know if they're standard or metric, but if you have a basic socket set, you can do this job. The next thing you're going to need is half of the most important things. You're going to need a filter. For most Hondas, this is the part number for this. This is a K&N filter, and I'll tell you why I use K&N here in a second. But the part number is KN-204. That's going to be the filter for pretty much your, you know, your standard Honda sport bikes. And now, as far as the other manufacturers, I'm not real sure. And if you ask me about like a Ducati or a Triumph, I really have no idea. But you can probably go to your local auto parts store or hunt the forums, or just do a quick Google search. You can figure out exactly what you need and you can order it. Luckily, my local O'Reilly's keep these in stock for me. So the nice thing, the reason I choose K&N is, one, they're a reputable you know, filtration company, you know, air filters, oil filters, I think even some fuel filters. But the one nice thing about it is, and this is something that I don't really see on many other filters, I'm sure other filters have this type of setup, but it's got, not only does it have, I believe this is a 14mm nut on top of it, so that way, you know, you can get it on and off extremely easily. It also has a through hole. You'll see that? See that right there? That through hole is for if you're going to have a track day. Some tracks require you to safety tie your oil filter, so that way it doesn't come flying off and coat the track in oil and everyone hate you. And just so you guys know, I was way off on the size. It's actually a 17mm, and a 17mm fits on there perfect. But I didn't include this in the tools that you'll need because technically this isn't necessary. You may have an oil filter that does not have a nut on the top of it. It's just I had a really bad experience with my very first ever motorcycle oil change where I could not get the filter off, and I had to actually use a pair of channel locks, and I actually ended up beating a flathead screwdriver through the center of it and using that to twist it off, and it was a nightmare. So I use these to avoid that. Yeah, they're a little bit expensive, but it's worth it. They're about $16.99 for the KN-204s. And if I remember this, I'll put links for everything that I bought in the description. Now, the next thing that you're going to need, and arguably the most important thing, because this is the life of your motorcycle. Without this, you're done for. It is literally the beating heart of your motorcycle, and that is your oil choice. Not really your choice, just oil in general. Some oil is better than no oil, according to my dad, and I can't argue with that. I'd rather have something in there than nothing. A lot of people may disagree with me on this, but I've run this oil in this bike ever since I've owned it. I have run Mobil 1 10W40 Racing 4T, which you can get at Walmart or pretty much any auto parts store, but a friend of mine turned me on to this, and this is the Valvoline 4-stroke motorcycle oil 10W40. It says superior wet clutch protection, which is what I have, obviously. Most bikes do have wet clutches. And so I would go with this Valvoline formula instead of the Mobil 1 for two reasons. One is because back in the day, Valvoline was Honda's oil manufacturer. That is what they used. And a good friend of mine, who actually is the guy that worked on this bike when I had all the timing and stuff done to it, this is what he uses in all of his bikes. And he told me that the formula that this has is the same formula that Honda used back in the day. Now, according to my research that I've done, Honda has their own oil manufacturer these days. They don't use Valvoline anymore, but there's also speculation that they kind of contract out their oil manufacturers too. So I'm not real sure. It could still be Valvoline, but I do know that Valvoline made the oil for these bikes back in the day. So in 2006, Valvoline was putting the oil in Honda's stuff. So that is what I'm using. And reason number two is that a bottle, 1 quart of the Mobil 1 Racing 4T, I'm not knocking it. I love it. It's good stuff. Mobil 1 makes good stuff. But it's about $10 a quart. This stuff, however, is $4.27 a quart at Wally World. So you can't really beat that price. Not only that, I trust this oil because I had a reputable source tell me that that's what they use. And also, this is the same oil that's in the bike right now. And if you've watched any of my videos, you know that I don't necessarily baby this thing, but at the same time, it's held up. The oil has held up, and it's kept my engine running smooth and good. And I haven't had any problems with this oil, even though it's a little on the cheaper side, which I don't have a single problem with. So enough talk, let's get to work. All right, so I'm sorry you can't see my face. My little shed out here is a complete mess. It's not like working its way up to a mess. It's done. It is a mess. So I'm kind of in close quarters right now, but I'm gonna still show you guys exactly how to take this stuff apart. We're only gonna have to remove this belly fairing right here, so it's not gonna be that difficult. So you're gonna take your tool of choice with your number 5 Allen, and you're just going to start taking this stuff apart. One thing I forgot to mention, guys, before I started this, is that another good tool that you could always use is gloves. I actually like changing my oil when the engine's a little warm, because it makes the oil flow a little bit better. But and that also justifies using the gloves. If the engine's hot, you want to use gloves, obviously. Right now the engine is stone cold because it's actually a little bit past midnight right now while I'm doing this. I am going on a ride tomorrow, and I wanted to get the oil changed beforehand, so that way, you know, it's been needing the oil change for a little bit, and so I wanted to go ahead and do it and get it done, so that way I know that my engine's going to be protected and everything's going to run the way it should. So we've almost got all of them out, and so let's see, we got one more over here, and I'll show you guys exactly what I'm working on once I'm through getting them all out. I know I'm all up in the way, just give me 1 second. Okay, so once the autofocus kicks back in, I'll show you guys exactly the bolts I removed. I removed this one. There's one right here. There's one here. There's one right here you gotta remove. And there's one right here. And there's actually a connection between the two belly fairings down here at the bottom. I'm actually gonna see if I can skate by without actually taking them completely apart. Alright guys, so as you can see, the oil filter is right here. I didn't take my belly fairing completely off because it's kind of a pain in the neck at the bottom. You can take it off completely, but I say if you can get to the oil filter without removing everything completely, go for it. So all you gotta do is pull this portion out a little bit from the inside of the fairing and you're good to go. You can get to it just fine. So I actually went and grabbed me an extension for my ratchet, so that way I can stick it in there better, no pun intended, and get the oil filter off. But before we take the oil filter off, the oil level is probably going to be up high enough to where if you pull this off now, you're going to get oil all over your fairings and your exhaust, and you definitely don't want that. If you do get oil on your exhaust, make sure you clean it off with some brake clean and a towel really well, or it'll stain your exhaust and it'll smell bad for a little bit and it'll smoke. But so before we take this off, we're gonna crack the drain plug and we're gonna drain it. One tool, one very important tool that I forgot to mention that you have to have is a drain pan, you guys. And I've got this shallow drain pan here so that way it can fit under my bike. It can actually fit under my bike without it being up on the back stand, but I do have the bike up on the back stand, which makes this job a lot easier. So you're gonna take your ratchet and your 12mm, you're gonna scoot your oil pan out of the way a little bit, and we're gonna crack the drain nut. And I'll show you guys exactly where that is. There's your drain plug right there, guys. It's like I said, it's a 12mm, and it's right in between the split in the exhaust on the 06 and I'd say probably 07 CBRs as well. It's really easy to get to. Honda gives you just enough room to get a wrench up in there. So we're gonna do that now, and we are going to break this sucker loose. There we go. So after you get it loose, you can do this by hand, and you will probably get a little messy. So you want to make sure you got your oil pan ready to catch the oil. And this is another really good reason to wear gloves. I mean, you probably will get a little bit of oil on you. Not a whole lot, but I mean, you know, things happen. So I'm just gonna back this up a little bit here so y'all can see what's going on. Sorta. I mean, it's pretty straightforward from here, obviously, but you know, you might see me get a little messy. That's okay though. And there we go, ladies and gentlemen, if y'all can see that. Got it perfect too. And look at that, we didn't even get that dirty, you guys. That's not exciting at all for you, is it? Check it out, we didn't even get that dirty. Not even my glove got dirty. Like no oil on it at all, really. So what you're gonna want to do now is let that drain for a little while. I'm just gonna show you guys the bike, actually. I mean, forget it. It's a good looking bike. I don't know if I've showed you guys this yet, but the last time that I was at Cycle Gear, I bought this doohickey right here. And this sucker is nice. It's very nice. It's worth its weight in gold. And you can see in our little eyeglass right there. Oh, we just missed it too. You could actually watch the oil drain out right there. That's pretty neat. And if you see that, we don't have much oil dripping. Just a little bit. You see that little sliver? And it's good to have the bike up on the rear stand if you have one, because it kind of cocks the bike up a little bit, helps the oil drain. And even though it wasn't warm, it drained really quick, you guys. I'm pretty impressed. It's not like it's super thick oil anyway, I'm just saying. Okay guys, while we're waiting for that oil to drain completely, I usually like to give it a few minutes, just, you know, not be in a rush. That's also partly why I'm doing this at midnight. But what you're gonna wanna do is pull this fairing down just a hair, and you can see our filter right here. I'll put my light on it so you guys can see it a little bit better. Right there, we got that filter there. And so this is another real cool thing. I can reach in here and grab this just fine, no problem. But this just makes my life a lot easier. Just putting that wrench on there like that, and having that extra leverage, and piece of cake. And that honestly probably would have been pretty hard if I just did it by hand. And don't quote me on this. I didn't do a lot of research on this particular thing, but I read somewhere that motorcycle oil filters have to have a certain amount of, well, obviously a certain amount of torque, but I mean they build up a lot of pressure. Like the engine actually builds up a lot of pressure on the inside, and so these do have the potential of blowing off. So you do need to put them on there pretty tight. And make sure you're disposing of your oil in a safe way. Most of your auto parts stores will take it and recycle it, and so there's no reason to just not do that. So make sure you're keeping our planet safe. Captain Planet will come kick you in the nuts if you don't take care of this stuff. So make sure you're disposing of this properly. Alright everyone, so now what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take the plastic covering off of your new filter. If I can even do this without a knife. One thing to make sure of too is make sure there's a gasket on these filters right here on the edge. Make sure that the old gasket is not sitting on where it makes contact with the engine. What I'm trying to say is make sure that the gasket came off with the filter, because you don't want to double gasket this, because you're going to have a bad day if you do. Comes off just like that. And K&N actually pre-lubed this. Normally I would tell you to dab a little bit of your old oil and run it around here, but these are actually, this actually came pre-lubed. I don't know if y'all can see that very well, but it did. I'm still gonna do it just for good measure, but it did. Like, I mean, I don't really have to do this, but it's habit. So there's that. So another thing is you want to make sure that you want to put this on by hand first. You don't want to just, you know, start ratcheting this down, especially like with a freaking impact or something. Are you kidding me? So you want to do this by hand at the beginning to make sure it's actually going to fit, which it did. So then you're going to want to take your wrench and you can just tighten this down a little bit. You ain't got to kill it. But I did it hand tight, and I didn't hold the handle. I just held the head of the ratchet, and I tightened it till I couldn't anymore. And I'm pretty stout, so don't be afraid to put a little bit of elbow grease on it, but don't overdo it. If you don't feel comfortable with this, just take it to a mechanic. Okay, bottom line. But you're watching this video, and that's my opinion. So. Okay, so now what you're going to want to do is I'm still letting it drain just to make sure we get as much of the old stuff out of there as we can. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the fairing back on, because we're done with the filter. We're finished. Easy peasy. If I wasn't making a video about this, I'd already be done. Alright guys, what I'm doing now is I'm just putting the fairing back on. Kind of had to wrestle with it just a little bit there, but not too bad. And you don't want to go too hard on the fairing bolts, especially if you have something like this. You don't have to go very hard. It's pretty much the next best thing to having a Allen wrench attached to a drill. That's essentially what this is, and you can just spin it at your heart's desire. And it's just a good tool to have, you guys. I mean, if you do your own work to your own motorcycle, I'd say it's definitely a good investment to have. And there we are, ladies and gents. So I got all the fairing bolts back on, which is good. So pretty much the job, the hardest parts of the job are pretty much done. The only thing we have left to do now is put the drain bolt back in, and then you can probably guess what happens next. So let's get started. All right, so you're gonna wanna move your pan out of the way, and you're probably gonna get a little bit of drippage, but that's all right. And you may not be able to see this very well, but if you got it out, I'm pretty sure you can get it back in too. As you can see, the gloves are off, which this usually happens by the time I'm about to end a video. You know, you're working on stuff and you gotta take your gloves on and off a bunch to handle the camera without getting oil all over it. If you film a lot, you'll understand. All right, so we got that nice and tight. So now, I'm gonna move y'all, actually, that's what I'm gonna do. All right, so our ratchet is still on tighten from where we torque down the oil filter. So if I could just figure out how to get this on there, now we can just start tightening this down a little bit. And you ain't gotta kill this either, you really don't want to. You just wanna get it nice and snug. And that's all I'm gonna do to her. So that part's done. Okay, so the next and final step of this procedure is adding your oil. So you're gonna wanna remove your oil fill cap. Make sure you don't lose that, it's super important. Make sure you don't lose any of this stuff. And so this thing is gonna hold 3 quarts no matter what, so I'm gonna start dumping them in. And here's a little tip. Turn the bottle this way and pour it in like this. Makes it super easy. Getting every drop in that bad boy. All right, we got to the last bottle here. And at this point, you're gonna wanna start looking through your sight glass. You got a sight glass right through here. You wanna start watching that because you don't wanna overfill this thing. This thing will take about just under 4 quarts. I'm gonna say 3 3/4, okay? So we're gonna start watching that. So don't pour the whole bottle in is what I'm trying to say. But you're gonna see me empty this bottle into it, but that's because this bottle was my spare. So I'm gonna use the rest of it before I open up a brand new one, you know? Trying to be economical about this. All right. All right, everyone, so if you can see that, it's looking pretty good and it looks a little full, but what you're gonna have to do is you're gonna have to start the bike up and let it run. I'm not gonna do that because it's 1 o'clock in the morning. Before I leave in the morning, I'm gonna start it up. I'm gonna check the level and make sure that it's good to go. But basically from here, put about 3.5 quarts in it, start it up, let it run for about 1 to 2 minutes, and then shut it down, check the level again, and you may have to get a partner to help you if you don't have a rear stand, because the bike's gonna have to be standing straight up now. Once you get someone to help stand the bike up straight, or if you have a stand, get it standing up straight again and check the level. It needs to be about right in the middle. All right, everyone, that's pretty much it. That's all there is to it. So I hope you guys got a lot out of this. Like I said, in the morning, the reason I'm doing this so late is because I'm taking a big trip tomorrow. Nothing too exciting, really. It's just kind of a little trip. We're gonna take some pictures, maybe a few videos with some buddies. But I really wanted to get this done because it's been a while since I've done an oil change. Not like dangerously too long, but I like to change it if it's been a certain time period. If I haven't met the correct mileage, I like to change my oil every 3,000 miles or so. Even if the oil says it can go longer than that, I still like to do it. So, just trying to keep the bike alive for as long as possible, and that's the goal here. So, I hope you guys got a lot out of this. If you did, give the video a like. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. I would really appreciate it. It helped me out a lot, make me feel good about myself, so that way I can stop cutting my wrists. So, I'm just kidding, that's not funny. But seriously, you guys, I hope you got a lot out of it. I really had a lot of fun doing it. I haven't done a video like this in a long time, and I really enjoyed just doing a simple little wrench job on the bike. So if you enjoyed, like I said, just share it, show your friends. I hope it helped you out, and I hope you made it this far in the video to hear me talk about this. So, but your views, I really appreciate it. Just go ahead and subscribe. I mean, you know, I post cool shit every now and then, so that'll be great. But hope you guys have a good night or good morning, whatever. And I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.
I wanna be a good man. I wanna see